Joining us now is State Representative Rafael Anchía. Thank you so much for being with us, Representative.
Thank you, Julie. Good to visit with you.
What is your reaction to what the governor announced last week, easing up on some restrictions?
So the governor was spot on a lot of stuff. I was pleased to see that kids were going to continue learning virtually through the end of the year. I thought that was a smart move by Commissioner Morath. I was happy to hear that the governor's listening to medical professionals in terms of reopening the economy. State parks are going to be open to allow people to enjoy the outdoors and engage in social distancing. All of those were positive steps. I think the one question mark for all Texans is what was not said, and that was, how do we ensure that we have adequate testing statewide so that we can return to work? I was just talking to one of my employees the other day and about our transition plan to go back to work, and she asked, well, do I go back, or can I go back, because she's in a high risk group? Can I go back if everyone in the firm is not tested? And that was the exact right question. So I'm concerned that we're ranked near last in testing, and unless we can test and isolate, then return to work on a broad scale becomes very risky. So I think there were some really great things in the governor's press conference, but the things that were not said are the things that I think a lot of people are concerned about.
And State Representative, you live in Dallas County, one of the hot spots here in Texas. What's your feeling on when this area can even begin to think about reopening? May, June? And how do you get testing to the level where it should be?
So on the first part of the question, I'm not going to put a date on it. I'd rather defer, like our county judge in Dallas is doing, to the medical professionals who are guiding his decision making. And when the medical folks give us the all clear, that's when we should start migrating back. It's a tough question. Your second question is really tough. How do we ensure that we have enough testing to go ahead and get the all clear to go back? I mean, that's tough. Right now, you have to have a specific set of symptoms. You have to be in certain age or risk demographics to get tested. Or I guess you can be a professional athlete and then you definitely get tested. But for the average Texan, testing is not available at a broad scale, and that really is a problem. The federal government has not been able to make it available to the states, and then the states are having to kind of fight it out in this competition against each other for not only testing but PPE. So until we have widespread testing available, I think it's tough to put any date on a return to work.
And as you know, Representative, communities of color have been hit hard by this virus all across the country. You look at New Orleans, Chicago, New York with Latino residents. How do you go about sort of protecting communities of color? And also, when the recovery begins, when we begin to climb out of this from an economic standpoint, how do you protect the disadvantaged from getting stepped on again?
I mean, this crisis has laid bare all kinds of chasms in our society. It's caused us to rethink who our essential workers are, who the people who are that are picking the crops and putting food on our table, who are our grocery workers are. We pay more attention now. A lot of those people in a majority state like Texas are people of color. And you correctly point out that Latinos and African Americans, Asians are taking it on the chin, not only because they're out of work, but because the disparity in health impacts have fallen most acutely on them.
Right.
There's some simple things that we could do legislatively to help fix these inequities, or at least ameliorate them. The first one is to expand Medicaid statewide. We have missed out on billions of dollars in the state of Texas because the legislature has not done that, and that would put give more people medical homes, get them access to health care that they desperately need, so they can mitigate some of the effects. And the other thing is paid sick leave. My gosh, most people who sort of work in the white collar sector have access to paid sick leave. If you're an hourly worker, you don't, for the most part, and that is a big problem during this pandemic. The fact that our courts have struck down Dallas's paid sick leave and that of other municipalities is really outrageous. That is something that we need to work on legislatively and statewide. We don't want sick people going to work, and if they feel pressure that they're not going to be able to put food on the table, they're going to go to work when they're sick, and they're going to infect a lot more people. That kind of dynamic has made this pandemic worse, and this won't be the last one. We need to remedy it through these simple legislative fixes before the next one.
In the short time we have left, Representative, a victory for the Texas state Democrats this week when it comes to mail-in ballot, a judge ruling in their favor.
It's beyond me that the Texas Attorney General continues to fight this and is asking people to put their life and their vote at odds. I mean, people are legitimately concerned about going out and voting in person, and not just the voters, but our poll workers, many of whom are senior citizens, would be exposed on a broad scale to people who are sick. To me, it is confounding that our Attorney General continues to fight this. I wish Texans would just call him and say, stop. The federal judge is right. Let us vote by mail, as 33 other states are doing right now, and as many other states are doing on an emergency basis. People should not have to decide between their right to vote and their right to life. It's very concerning.
What about concerns about fraud, though? Real briefly.
So sure, I mean, those are real concerns, but the fact is that we have data points and we have examples from all over the country of other states that do this right, do this well, do this without fraud. It's not like we're making this up from whole cloth, or that Texans are substantially different from others in even in red states like Utah, for example, that use mail-in ballot regularly. We are no more or less prone to fraud than the other states that do it. And there's a lot to learn. We have models to use. We should use them now.
Representative, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Julie, Gromer, be safe.
Back at you. We'll be right back.